digging, dog tags. Dog, this is awesome. It's Optimus Prime and your quadrant and talking to you. Got that? I was in a mind when I crafted this. The Dungeon Master's wrath with a dash of sick. I dash like Sonic Mad, not a pacifist, but pacifist the tracks when I'm rapping, kids. We the last of us. The master race, take him with a master hand. It's cancerous. I hit him with the master sword, and sure I make an eyesore, but I wonder how 4 guys make a Triforce.
Hey guys, you're listening to episode number 136 of the Trinity Force podcast. My name is Adam Ponophobia Cogswell, and of course, I'm here, as always, as your host. And we finally have the group of guys back together for this week's podcast.
Yay.
Everybody smile. Look pretty to the crowd that's listening to their cars right now.
Yep.
You can't see it, but Dom has a silliest grin on his face, just like every other
Well,
week.
it's because I thought you had the wrong number, but then I checked some stuff and you were right.
Aha! I knew it! I was going to ask you earlier. I was like, is this 136?
I'm really not sure. I mean, we should really... I should check the website.
We should really go back and count all the episodes to make sure we're
you
actually
got it
136. For all we know. This is fun. That's funny. So, I hope you guys were around last night. Do you guys know what happened last night?
I do,
Yes,
but I
I do.
want you to tell me.
There was a magical podcast that went live last night.
What was magic about it?
Well, it was magical because I was not on it.
Was there a wizard there?
There was Optimus Tom.
Is he a wizard?
He's close enough to a wizard, right?
Pretty wizardly.
Wizard. Yeah. No, okay. So Tom Meringue, Optimus Tom, Wrecker-N, they did the T-Force LCS rundown, went live for the very first time last night on stream.trinityforcepodcast.com. They go live at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is 6 p.m. Pacific Time, and it goes on right after the LCS at the beginning of the Challenger Series. So they will run down everything LCS that you need to know. They're going to do NA scene, EU scene. They're going to probably do some GPL and Korea, OGN Masters, whatever it may be. And they're also going to get into pro players' lives and how pro players are playing the game. And they're just going to break down everything that the pros are doing. And it's what you guys have been calling for Trinity Force for a really long time. And we haven't been able to focus on it like we wanted to. So Dom and I took a what did we do, 2 weeks? Did we turn that around in 2 weeks?
Yeah, it started out as that crazy harebrained idea of like, we should just do this. And then we were like, well, we don't have time. But maybe. And then, like, it was, that was like the little tiny snowball that just kind of grew and grew, and then it crashed into the wall, and there was a podcast.
Right.
And now it's magical.
Yeah.
It's magical.
Well, it is magical because they're
That's how magic works.
Because they're, oh, God, please. What did you say?
It's magical because they're casting. Just like wizards.
Fuck.
Oh, man.
That's why I tried to cut him off.
Yeah, I knew he made a
Nope.
pun. I had to keep
Can't do it.
So,
Damn it.
you guys have heard of us talking about that. Fuck it. You guys have heard us talk about that for weeks, and it's finally there, and it's out, and you can go to lcs.trinityforcepodcast.com. The new episode is out every Tuesday. It'll be on iTunes in the next couple days, and I'm still waiting for approval on Stitcher, but we'll be there as soon as possible. So there is an RSS feed. Go ahead and plug that into your little readers and, all the happy stuff. So, don't forget, OzLOL. They will come out, ozlol.trinityforcepodcast.com. They will come out every Thursday. So you have 4 hours of podcasts a week now from the Trinity Force Podcast Network.
So many podcasts.
That's right. And
I want a quick, kudos to the guys last night. They did a really good job, and especially to Wrecker, because he was fighting strep throat. And that's a pretty serious big deal.
It gave him a nice baritone, though. I thought he sounded rather manly last night.
I do not even know what Adam is so angry about there.
It's because Luke's making noise in the background.
Oh.
I heard a dog, maybe?
yes,
I don't-
the dog was under my desk, and then all she wanted me to do was pet her, and then she grabbed a water bottle and started running down the hall with it.
Oh, good puppy.
And now, so if you hear crunching at all in this podcast, it's because the dog has a water bottle. Back on track. I've had a few of you email and tweet at us and say, hey, why does TrinityForcePodcast.com not have good links to these other websites? Why do I have to try so hard to get to the websites? We're working on that. When I started this when 2014 started up, I had a lot of goals for Trinity Force. The main one was just really going live all the time and getting our faces out there and looking pretty and making sure Sean gets his haircut. That still
It'll be a while.
That goal still hasn't been met.
Yep.
But at least 2 and 3 other goals. But I didn't expect to grow so rapidly. I mean, it's mid-February and we have 2 other podcasts working, toward more content. And Yeah, there's
we?
gonna be a new website coming. That's all it is. Like, there's gonna be a website coming. It's gonna be an aggregate. It's gonna have 3-4 rows, and it's gonna have all the podcasts, all the feeds on there, and you'll be able to get
Like
to
a
all
hub.
the sites. Yep, it'll be a hub.
It's going to be the Nexus for all the podcasts.
I should call it that. I should have called it the T-Force Podcast Nexus. That is gonna be
There
the
you
name
go.
of that site.
Perfect.
Yes, that'll come. So
And hopefully there's no inhibitors to hold you back.
Oh my god.
What?
I give up. I'm done hosting.
Yeah.
I'm done hosting this fucking show.
Declawd, you want to just take this show? I'll step out here.
Hey guys, welcome to the Trinity Force podcast. I'm your step-in host, Robert Declawd Iwanski. I am here to talk about PvE. We got a lot of updates going on here.
But I haven't run through all the news. Some host you are. What about the
See, I messed it up already.
What about the T-shirt store?
I thought you
No
were
more
doing
rage
great.
quitting, please. Thank you very
I
much.
already sold all your stuff.
Why don't
Adam,
you
that's
log
why
back
there's-
in?
in front of
Hit
your wife.
reconnect. Get your ass back in here.
Okay, guys, don't forget there's T-shirts out there. There's going to be T-shirts for the LCS podcast on and Oz LOL here in the next week, 2 weeks. We have to make sure that the logos get final. That's store.turnityforcepodcast.com. Actually, before we get into the PB discussion, I want to tell a story. Do we have time for me to tell a pretty cool story about the podcast? Dom has already
Sure.
heard it.
I want to hear it.
I've heard it like 4 times. I'm sick of this story.
Yeah, I've only told you it once.
I haven't
me
heard it,
twice,
so
for
please
sure.
tell it. Great one.
I thought I had told. I told Declawd the story too, but I want to tell everybody else because I thought this was really cool.
Did you? Oh.
Yeah, it's about pint night and meeting a guy there. So every Friday night I go out to.
That sounded way
I know where
different
Dom's
coming out of your
going.
mouth there.
I give up. No, I'm fucking done.
Not that I'm judging. You do your thing, baby.
Yeah,
but
we're not judging.
This is over.
Ah.
So every
No,
Friday night I go out to pint night at Juggle Gyms, and I don't know which headphone goes where. And I know the bartender there. Somebody say something real quick.
Hi.
Thank you. All right, I know the bartender there, and she comes up to me and says, "Hey, my boss started talking to me about you and started asking, does that guy do a podcast?" And she's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Is it a League of Legends podcast?" And she's still skeptical, like, "Yeah. Well, I mean, why do you care?" He's like a 45-year-old guy or older, whatever, father. And he's like, "Oh, my 13-year-old son listens to the Trinity Force podcast, and he loves you guys, and just thinks it'd be really
That's
awesome to meet you and everything." And I looked at her and I went, "I'm just a dude who talks to nerds on the internet. I never expected this day to come." So that's like
That
my
is
first
awesome.
brush in with. I wouldn't even call it fame, just brush in with an actual fan.
Yeah, an IRL happenstance meeting with someone who knows who you are. You're popular. You have
Kinda
fame
like that
now.
time I got in a car accident because that lady hit me and Adam just happened to be the car in front of me and we'd never met before, even though we'd met online.
Yeah, Sean and I had played games for 5 years, and then Sean got in an accident. This is the first time I met him.
That bitch ran into me.
Wow.
I didn't do shit. All right.
He runs up to my window and goes, "Knock, knock, knock."
Like, you motherfucker, I know you.
Oh, Amanda,
What?
is that you,
Sure,
Adam?
Jayton. Yeah, come on. I got you.
Wow. That is
That
a pretty
was-
cool story, too.
He's the only person I know in Kentucky, and he just happens to be in front of me. I don't know. Small world, man.
That is pretty neat.
Declawd, at the end of this podcast, you're going to come up with a pun that I'm going to use for the title that has something to do with ending the show or just that this is the last episode. Just letting you know the number of times I've quit this episode so far. It's probably about to happen
I
again.
think we just call it the Rage Quit episode. You keep rage quitting.
I'm not going to rage quit on PvE discussion, so let's do that, shall we?
Sounds good.
You can do better transitions in the future. I know you can. And God,
Yeah.
will you stop drinking that? That is just shameful.
Yeah, Adam. It's
For those
gross.
of you listening in your car, I'm drinking Mike's Hard Black Cherry Lemonade.
Ugh.
Okay, PB discussion. This is 4.3. This is what, 4.3 is what we're coming up on. And there's been a lot of changes talked about to Boots of Lucidity, Boots of Mobility, and the 3 support items, which is the Coin, Spell Thief, and Targon's Embrace. And we're not going to focus on numbers so much as we're going to try to focus on what the abilities are, the new abilities on the items are going to do, because numbers are subject to change. Actually, Dom, I think you are the man to lead this conversation off, because let's talk about the difference. Let's talk about Coin, Spell Thief, and Targon's.
Yes. Yes, I am the man. So the Ancient Coin line is not seeing a considerable nerf. Basically, what they're doing is removing the the health regen as it is and changing it to a type of thing that is based on minion kills in lane. And that's because the item, like that line is so ridiculously powerful and just good for every single support champion that they need to make it like there some sort of trade-off exist with that. And like it's still going to be really good. The fact is the item like Talisman of Ascension has an amazing active and it has 20% CDR on it. There's never going to be like it doesn't matter what type of lane you're going into unless you're trying to go for a specific strategy like heavy harass or really trying to push hard through Targons. You know, you're like coin is always going to be a safe, reasonable option for you. It's not going to have the same type of regen if you decide to wander away from lane to roam up to mid and try and put on some pressure there, or like go ward up the enemy jungle and that type of thing. But it still ends up being useful.
The only way I could see the coin line becoming bad is if they start significantly nerfing the amount of gold that you get. Like right now, yeah, they're nerfing. They're talking about nerfing the HP so that there is no health per 5. Because with Doran Shield and Ancient Coin, you're not going to be harassed on a lane. It's like it's all in. You're dead.
Well, should we talk about Doran Shield then or no? Should we wait on that?
Is that in this update?
Yes,
They
Doran
bring it
Shield's
up,
getting
yep.
hit.
Yeah, let's bring it
Doran
up if
Shield's
it's
getting
relevant
hit.
right
So
here.
it's this one we're going to have to talk about numbers. Basically, they're dropping the health by 20. It's at 100 right now. It'll go to 80. And they're reducing the health regen from 10 health per 5 to 5. And there's been some talk that might be hitting the item a little bit too hard. The block element is going unchanged. But the issue right now, and like, is Doran Shield's breaking bottom lane because it's just always good to have, and you can't easily run poke heavy supports in the bottom lane because Doran's Shield, it's not the block part of it, it's just the amount of health regen on it that is nullifying everything that you can accomplish there.
And coupling that with the defensive health regen mastery as well.
Yeah. I mean, and like Doran's Shield is a lot of the reason why Leona is so ridiculously strong right now. You were supposed to be able to beat Leona by just poking her down and like preventing her from getting into situations where she could engage on you. But because of Doran's Shield and just all the regen that's available right now, you can't do that. So she hits level 2 and decides it's time to murder you. And she's just going to keep doing that unless you're Alistar or Thresh. And then she's just going to do it at level 6.
Right. But, you know, that change, it's one of those changes where if you even make a small change to it to fix one lane, it's going to heavily impact another. And it's going to heavily impact top lane and what champions we see up there. Because right now, besides the fact that Shyvana, Mundo, Shyvana and Mundo, they're resourceless champions. And we saw that when EG played into Coast, Zion Spartan picked Jax. And in the early levels, he was having a hard time harassing Shyvana out because Shyvana can stay in the lane and regen back with Perseverance and the Doran Shield. And he had to continue to push the lane and try to get a little bit more farm than her and go back and buy those early game items. Like he bought 2 Doran's Blades and a Doran's Shield, and he started with the Doran's Blades. So, that is an inherent problem right there in top lane that you couldn't push somebody out. But now that they're nerfing Doran's Shield a lot, this is a huge buff to Renekton. This is a huge buff to Rumble. This is a huge buff to Jax. This is a huge buff to Olaf, to Tryndamere.
It just opens up a lot of other options than like the normal 3 top lane picks.
Right. Yeah, because
do you think like maximum disrespect Garen comes back into play then?
In solo queue, sure. In competitive play, no. I mean, we saw him got played once in season 3, and with my Fnatic.
Did he get played last night?
Oh, he did get played once last night too, didn't he?
It was in the Challenger games. I didn't watch those because there was a podcast to watch. So
I think if his team is right, Garen can be very useful. He can fill that split push role. He can take down towers.
You can't move him. Garen just like runs at you, and you say, "Okay, that's Garen."
Yeah.
But that's why
just ignore him.
That's why you had Mundo and Shyvana right now because they did the same thing that Garen could do, but become as tanky or if not more tanky and do more.
And
damage.
they do a lot of damage.
But being able to, I like this. The fact that this Doran Shield nerf, I think it's a little too heavy-handed because they nearly halved or have the amount of HP regen, right? You said it went from
They did half it.
Okay, 8 to 4.
It goes from 10 to 5.
10 to 5. They are talking about tuning it back up a little bit so there's more regen on it, but it's sort of in a speculation state. But they do intend to change Doran's Shield because it's causing a lot of problems in bot lane.
Sure.
And it's one of those things where, like, if it's working in one lane, it's either overpowered or not effective in another lane.
Right. Well,
and
we
that's
saw
like
that.
kind of what's weird about the item right now.
Right. I'm really looking forward to the change, even if it's a giant nerf, and you might start Doran's Blade now instead and get your health regen through killing creeps and hard and heavy pushing. That right now I find I complain about top lane. I still like to play it, but I don't like playing Shyvana, Mundo, and Trundle. I really don't like playing those champions. But when you start giving me Olaf, Jax, and Renekton, where I could be a bully and the lane is now one based on skill rather than attrition, that's the type of lane that I want to play in. And so these changes really open it up. And we've been calling for Olaf for a couple episodes now. Actually, I don't know if we really talked about it on the podcast, but people are playing him out of the jungle. I don't see why you wouldn't start putting him in top lane.
Where he gets money and can just wreck people.
Yeah.
I mean, Sean's been saying that pretty much since season 4 started.
Yeah.
Yep. You sure have. So
been preaching it to the heavens, and people are just finally starting to listen.
What the hell am I drinking? That is good. Lakefront East Side Dark Lager.
Interesting.
That's good stuff. That stuff good.
All right, so with this change, we're Relic Shield, the Targon's line, is now having its base HP increased.
Increased, yeah.
Potentially increased, and they're potentially
the regen's going away.
The HP for 5.
Yeah, I think they've really gone through and realized there was way too much health regen available in bot lane, and that was kind of making a lot of support picks that were outside, like the Thresh, Leona, Annie triad. It was making them really unappealing, because why would you be somebody that can't initiate when you can be somebody that can initiate and or blow somebody up?
Right. Why would you play Karma or Lulu, who are Lulu's supposed to be a heavier poke, hasn't really been that way, but like Karma is a very heavy poke champion, and the only person she could kick out was Annie out of that group.
Yeah, and even then you had like Annie, it kind of relied on Annie like pussyfooting around, and like you really had to just be smarter than her. And if she kind of like tried to get on your case, then it was trouble for you, because Annie like hits level 4 and all of a sudden Karma's just gonna die there. It doesn't matter.
Sure.
If you haven't gone back to base, Karma will die.
So speaking of Karma and like the Spell Thief, this is what I really want to talk about. They're changing the passive to it, or adding a passive now that for your first 3 auto attacks in a period of time, it does an extra amount of damage to a turret when attacked.
It's first 3 auto attacks and or spells. Okay. But the caveats are that the attack or spell has to hit a champion, or the auto attack can hit a turret. And that's like a big deal, so you can't, like, if you miss a spell, you're not penalized. If you auto attack a minion, you're not penalized. You don't lose your charges of this. It's going to work on a similar system to the way the Targon's line works right now. To compensate for that, they are currently removing the ability power from the first and second tier Spell Thieves items. They're keeping it on Frost Queen's Claim, because you have to buy ability power items to get to that one anyway. Yeah. So, no big deal there. And then the charge system also is how the gold generation comes into play. I believe there is gold 10 involved on the item. It's not on the list here, so I'm not 100% certain. But like the big gold generation is still going to work the same way that it does right now, in that in order to make the money, you need to be proactive in lane and harassing. And all those things are really good. I think it makes the item way more appealing early on, especially for Karma, Lulu, Sona, all those types of champions. It's the addition of cooldown reduction on Frost Queen's Claim, and changing the active from a single target ability with 600 range to a skill shot with 850 that actually deals damage that scales with your champion level. That's what makes this item way, way more appealing to me. I'm not saying it's a best choice item in every single scenario. I haven't tested it at all, but I do think it's much more interesting and compelling. People have been...
I like how it's on spell, not just auto attack now. That's really huge.
It was always on spell once you got the second tier.
Oh, but the first one is spell now too?
Yes, if this is to be believed.
The problem I have still with these items, even like Face of the Mountain now has I believe it gives extra life, plus 1% of max HP. Oh, it gives you an ally and yourself the shield now, rather than just removing the health from you and giving an ally the shield. Or removing your life and giving you a shield.
Okay, you kind of jumped around all over the place.
I'm using this. I'm getting somewhere.
No. I like you, but you misdescribed the items. That's what I'm saying.
No, Face of the Mountain now. Okay. Face of the Mountain now heals an ally and yourself for 50 plus 1% of your max HP.
There we go.
Rather than giving a shield.
Yes,
okay.
And then the shield. No, shield is the active element, and that is now it no longer costs the owner's health. It just gives a shield that scales off of the target's total attack damage. There's talk of changing that to being total attack damage and ability or ability power.
Right.
So that it's appealing to use on a melee carry, range carry, or a mage. The basic idea is that right now the best use case is to just like Leona, cast it on yourself, then Zenith Blade in.
Right.
And between that and all Shield of Daybreak,
Eclipse.
Everything. Eclipse, thank you. She just explodes and does a ton of damage around her, like well past the stage of the game where she should be dealing damage.
See, the point I'm getting to here is Talisman of Ascension. Nothing has been changed on the item. It still has the Shurelya's active. I don't find any reason out of any of these items not to have Talisman of Ascension. The plays that you can make with this item, we saw it this weekend. The speed increase. There was a chase. Shoot, I can't remember who played. I think it was. I don't remember who played, but they popped Sivir Ultimate, they popped Talisman of Ascension, ran straight at the enemy team, and as soon as that wore off, the enemy team popped Talisman of Ascension and ran right back at him. I think it was Dignitas that caught him. I don't remember. But allowing the engage and disengage in that item makes that more appealing than Frost Queen's claim to me, because you're only slowing the one person you hit if you hit them with a skill shot. And, of course, Targon's is like anti-dive, right, if you're not going to be hard engaging like that. But I could see people picking up Spell Thief now to out-harass the enemy, but selling it to start the coin line, because Talisman is still too powerful.
I said as much on Twitter that I could see myself doing that. A lot of it really does depend on the composition that we're running. Like, if my team has Sivir, I will, depending on my champion, I might not look at Talisman as hard, because we already have the same type of effect coming from Sivir's ult, and so I can complement the team in different ways. Karma's a similar champion in that regard. I'm not saying it doesn't, like, there's not extra utility or
No, I'm just thinking, like, when you're taking that into consideration, should you be taking into consideration that you're using, the 10-second duration or whatever second duration is of Sivir Ultimate to engage? Because I feel like you should be using Talisman to engage and the Sivir Ultimate after the fact.
Right, but you're kind of trying to like really pigeonhole things into very, very specific scenarios, and like there's no way we know what's going to be the best use case in that type of situation. Like, it could be just as reasonable that you only need the one movement speed boost, and so if you have Sivir, why not get the extra nuke and the extra slow from another item?
My argument is, why use Sivir when you can have Talisman and you can save the duration of Sivir's ultimate for the team fight that you have engaged in? Why use it to start the fight and run that extra 2 or 3 seconds? You see what I'm trying to say here?
Yeah, I do, but there's no reason it can't go the other way.
What, using that to disengage?
Using Sivir's ult to engage and everything. Like,
sure.
And you in theory then, like, your attitude is you're not going to need it for the disengage. It goes the other way.
No.
You're making an argument that says, why wouldn't you use it this way? Like, it just goes both ways. It's just general playstyle preference at that point.
I think it also depends how the game's going. If your ADC is getting dogpiled and blown up because they have assassins, Face of the Mountain might give you that extra little wump, that she needs to get out of there.
But isn't that pretty much the same?
Or maybe the slow,
because Face of the Mountain has the shield on it. So why aren't there more people picking it?
No, right now they're changing it just so that it's like you're more inclined to use it on carries than you are to use it on tanks.
The shield's going to be bigger based on their attack damage.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, is that the heal? Damage
No,
scales
that's the shield.
Oh, that's the shield. Okay. Yeah, so, if you got a super fed carry, that shield's going to be a little bit better. Maybe it's better. We got to see how it is. I'm more excited about that one. Talisman, yeah, it's great. If your team is all working together and they group up and, great for the team fights. Solo queue, maybe you might want to get Face of the Mountain for those. Oh, man, he's being dumb again. Let me go ahead and save him. Or, oh, crap, they're jumping in on this guy. Let me go and save him with this Spell Thief slow. But I agree, in a team scenario where everyone's on the same page, the Talisman is very appealing.
I'm not arguing against that. Like Talisman still is the number one choice here, like in the majority of situations. You can't go wrong getting Talisman. Go wrong getting one of the other two items, and you can get punished for that. But the flip side is there are cases where getting one of the other two items is actually better for your team or your specific lane. Like, and that's really all they're going for. I don't think they're trying to put everything. I don't think they're trying to put all the items on the same level as coin, because
they're giving options.
The only way they could do that is remove the Shirelia's active and put it onto its own item, because that active is, you know, as Adam was saying, like that active is too good, and it's good in pretty much every single situation. But
or they can go the route of the jungle items and give them all the Shirelia's active. Right?
Yeah, and I don't want to do that. I like there being differences and everything, and like if nothing else, it's an opportunity to let players cater to their own playstyle. And like right now, you know, especially with the Doran shield start and everything, like you just don't get to do that. And frankly, supports really haven't gotten to do that from an item standpoint until Season 4. So it's uncharted territory, and they are just trying to, you know, get things like a little mapped out. They've acknowledged, Riot's acknowledged that it's... What?
Who was it in the recent match in the LCS? They were asked in a post-game interview why they didn't grab Doran's shield on Leona. They grabbed the Relic shield instead.
I don't know.
Was it Yellow Star? Well, one of them said they wanted the extra. It pretty much has similar stats to the shield, but they wanted the extra gold too, and it really worked well for them. So there seemed to be a little bit of a deciding factor.
I don't frequently start with Doran's shield because I personally prefer to have more vision in the very early game. I am a big believer. I'm a big believer in having a lot of extra vision for my own jungle, so that if counter jungling happens, my team can respond to that. But I acknowledge that it's not like the status quo way of playing the game. It doesn't work for most people, and that I kind of put myself at a disadvantage from a harassment standpoint, and I have to account for that. But you know, we've talked a number of times about what that, what that ward on red buff has done for our team, and just how much, how much advantage that
it's too good not to get. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, that's a trade-off I'm willing to make, but I understand why the majority of other players are now willing to do that. It's really just a preference thing.
Now that, say, talking about the extra vision that you were starting with in the bottom lane, and how that play style has impacted us. We have all said that, you know, it's great. We like the extra vision, but seeing how there have been a major decrease in the number of jungle invades in Season 4 because of the lack of early vision, don't you feel like you should be using an extra vision with your team to invade rather than protect?
It depends on the side of the map that I'm on, and it depends on my team's initial strategy. You know, like we just, you know, if we're not coordinated and we're not planning to invade or anything, and I'm red side, then it makes more sense to just ward up red buff and go to my lane and everything if we're not going to do anything. If we're going to try to make something happen, then I either will throw the one ward down and I'll save my other wards for, counter warding in the enemy jungle. But that's something I got to make sort of in the heat of the moment. I don't ever go in.
Team comp too.
Yeah, and if I'm blue side, I usually save my wards if we're going to be like doing aggressive invades, and I do like end up warding the enemy jungle.
Right.
And like I'm usually not at a loss when I get back to lane because the opponent, if they start a Doran shield, it's not like they don't have more vision than I have, so it's similar there. Part of that then relies on your marksman remembering to use his or her wards, and you run into a lot of cases where they completely forget. But you know. I don't know. When I'm in chat, I try to tell people where I want the ward because I can't put one there for whatever reason, or I only want the short-term ward there. But
what were you saying, Sean?
I was gonna say a good support will yell at their AD carry to put that ward in place.
I don't yell. I'm usually like, "Hey, can you ward there?"
And I'm like, "Sure," every time.
Yeah, I can do that.
I was trying to look what other changes. They were talking about reducing the cost of Ruby Crystal as well in this patch from 475 to 400.
Yeah, the basic idea is just to make it more accessible in the early game. Like it's a 475 is pretty hefty for what is effectively a basic tier item.
Right.
They're reducing the health on it, so it's not like they're just making health more valuable. but or more efficient. Sorry, they're not just making health more efficient. They're also, based on what I read, it doesn't sound like they're making too many changes to the other items. They're basically taking that 75 gold and putting it into the combined cost.
Sure.
So the overall efficiency of all the other items should stay about the same.
Yeah, and anybody who's thinking right now that I could start Ruby Crystal,
you can.
You absolutely can with that'd be 2 potions.
Yes.
You could start Ruby Crystal potions. I don't feel like that's going to be a start because the passives of the Dorans items are still
so good.
So good.
Yeah.
Because you're blocking damage and regenerating life, and hey, you have a base health of 80, and what Ruby Crystal? What is? How much does Ruby Crystal give, or what are they going to change it to?
It gives currently
180 now, right?
And it'll change to 150.
Okay.
So it is. I mean, and especially with the Doran's shield change coming into play, that actually is a pretty high disparity. But Doran's shield makes up for that in both health regen and the block. So even if regen gets reduced, like it's still, you're going to make up for that effective health.
However, the crystal can build into something. So let's say you're going for a quick build, Kindle Gem, you port and you have teleport back to base, port back in. You didn't really lose anything except for the cooldown.
Then you have that CDR.
Now you have a Kindle Gem. So I could see that working as a start.
I would just rather people stop buying more than one Doran's item. Like, I don't mind Doran's Blade and Doran's Shield out of the top lane, or maybe even bottom lane at some points where you can go Doran's Shield into Doran's Ring, maybe, like if you get the really early kill. But I'm sick of seeing so many people build so many Doran's items out of the top lane, like the Rain Man type of thing, 4 Doran's Blades rather than going to get a big item.
Yeah,
I get it if you have a very calculated strategy or reason for doing so, but my perception is that a lot of players just kind of do that out of habit now rather than with a specific intent. It's just like, oh, I need that extra HP
or panic, when in doubt, like, what do I get? Doran.
Get a Doran.
Go back to lane. Bam.
It can make sense in some situations. I get it. I mean, I get the double Doran's Blade and Doran's Shield on it.
Well, I mean, we even used to see the people in mid go like the triple Doran's Ring.
Right.
But,
well, having that extra life, mid being bigger trade lane than top lane, I get it, and you have more mana regen, But people were getting, but the champions were different at that time. They weren't like now. You have Ziggs who just sits back and farms and doesn't take any damage, and Gragas who is just safely farms because he has his barrel, whatever the hell it's called, where he drinks the grog, and regens life and mana.
Drunken Rage.
Is that what it? Yeah, that's it. So, anything else that I missed in all of this discussion? Dom?
No, I mean, obviously, a lot of the stuff really depends on numbers. They're talking about tweaking things here and there, and even if what we've talked about don't end up being the final solutions, the reality is that they are planning some adjustments to these items to make them A, more distinct, and B, more appealing than the Doran's Shield start than they currently are. And I'm looking forward to that just because I think it will kind of break open the effective support window. I mean, because right now you kind of put yourself your team at a disadvantage in like a solo queue game if you're picking someone other than Thresh, Annie, or Leona. Unless they're all bad, then it's a totally different story. We do it in ranked 5s. It's a different story. You can have very calculated reasons for wanting to pick Karma or Lulu, somebody like that. But overall, right now, those I just don't feel like there's a lot of variety in the support role right now because of the Doran's Shield start. So I'm looking forward to this, but change is frightening to many.
I prefer.
And I think Adam brought up a good point too. It brings a lot of changes to the top lane as well. So we're going to see a little shift in the dynamic, and
which I think top lane needs that little mix up right now anyway. So add a little bit more depth to the lane.
Make it more fun to play. It's just
rather than the giant just farm until critical mass point. That's kind of it.
Well, see,
that's until someone gets ganked and a tower gets taken down.
That's why I like playing different champions up there, like Pantheon.
We know.
Volibear. Diana.
The only champion I'm okay with out of any of that is Volibear because of how big of a tanks are sitting.
I've been successful with Pantheon, but then again, only when my jungler picks a tank, which now they're picking carries a lot more, so bruisers. So at that point, I go the Volibear, Trundle, Renekton.
Or they'll
Go with
pick
the safe
bruisers
picks.
and build them damage heavy.
Yeah, go with the
I'm
safe
gonna mess
picks.
with
Don't
Olaf.
lose your lane.
Yep.
I want to bring Olaf into the
Should,
story
he's so
here
good
now.
right now.
All right, so we're about a half an hour into this podcast. We've hit the major stuff. I want to talk about these next two topics tomorrow, tomorrow's podcast on Wednesday, because I think those will be a good way to start the podcast out.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Because Lucian
The
kind of
LCS
fits into
questions?
that. No, we have on Wednesday we'll talk about power spikes and why people should respect them and how you should handle them, and we'll talk about the current state of Lucian
Okay.
as well, and he fits into that power spike discussion. So let's.
So we're going to touch on Velkas?
I don't have anything to say about Velkas. If you guys want to talk about,
Hey, he's a mage.
He's cool and he
He's from
shoots
the
lasers.
He's
void.
been revealed.
He reminds
mage.
me of Shumagorath from Marvel.
I don't like talking about the new champions until we've actually got maybe like 2 weeks until we've played them. Especially after the Yasuo debacle, whatever. That's the Yasuo thing we had. We're like, he's kind of bad, and then he turns out to be very high skill cap, and he could be good in certain situations. I think we're going to start giving new champion releases a couple weeks before we talk about them.
Don't
That's
want
fair.
that egg on your face.
Well, I mean, again, the problem with playing on the PvE is the player base is like the player skill is so widely varied, and you can have successful results with a champion, and then turns out you weren't up against opponents who were
All of
posing
that
any
being
threat.
said, for the first 2 weeks Yasuo was out, I didn't win a single game with a Yasuo on my team.
Most people didn't. He had a terrible win rate. It took people a long time to master.
Well, we
him,
called
so-
it. We said, look, he's not going to be that much because he's too hard to play, but the people who play him well are going to do amazing.
He's too
It's
team
the same
heavy.
thing that happened when Zed came out, though.
And I think he sits there right now.
Zen.
I see people pick Yasuo and they do terrible because they don't know how to play him. But then the ones who do know how to play him do well. He's a risky pick. He's not a safe pick.
It, make,
It's
it,
not like,
it makes him a.
we got
fun-
him. It's going to be easy. No.
It makes him a fun LCS champion because
Oh, he's
You get to
entertaining to
see-
watch for sure.
yeah, you get to see what the best players can do with that guy, and what happens when he's played to his maximum potential or high echelon.
Echelon. All right, let's do some.
Yeah.
Let's do a couple listener questions and shut this down. Hopefully.
Sounds good.
So you know what grinds my gears, guys?
What
No.
grinds your gears?
When people tell
What's
me
that?
they're going to be on at a certain time and they never show up.
Who would ever do
It's
that?
happened 2 days in a
How?
row now.
How
on, Josh.
dare they?
So everybody out there, if you're listening to this on the car, I need you to go and tweet at the best Yeti and tell him to get his ass out of bed on time. Oh, he just logged on to Skype. Look at that.
I know, good timing.
Surprise.
Anyway, yeah, nothing grinds my gears more than when I have a moderator. Guys, we're looking for moderators in the chat, too. If you're here every week, I'll probably start modding some of you guys. Anyway, enough bullshit. Listener questions. You at Bose writes, a few questions about pacing. Do you think the pacing of the game, as it is good? Are there things that you would like to see them change? Well, we talked a lot about those changes tonight and what things we'd like to see changed. Do you guys feel like the game has become faster or slower? What do you think Riot will have to change in order for the game to keep the same amount of time kills pacing?
To me, pacing's in a really weird spot right now because I still feel like mid-game is kind of a low point right now. Like, there's so much going on early game, and then it gets to mid-game, and it's sort of like the game slows down for a little bit, and then it speeds back up as everybody really starts finishing items and team fights are breaking out everywhere. That's just me.
I think early game super slow, early mid game, I don't know what you would call it, like that spot in between real mid and real early is when it starts to break open. We saw it with Curse. They got like 7 kills in like a 4-minute period or something, and that was like at about 10 minutes, and then it slowed down again until endgame.
Is it right to compare solo queue experience to LCS games?
Yeah, I think a lot. How do I say this? Yes and no.
Okay, that's fine. And
Because
like
I-
the only reason I brought it up is because like most people just play the game solo queue every time. Maybe there are a lot of people who duo with friends, but there aren't nearly as many listeners out there in my estimation that are playing like in an arranged team sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that standpoint, LCS games aren't really an accurate indicator of the state of pacing because it's more of an arranged team environment as opposed to the solo queue.
And you notice there's a lot of lane swaps, 2v1s. And that is very timed. We got to do it this time. If we take down a turret, we swap back. and they're reacting to each other, so it completely changes the pace of the game. Bless you. So I do think it is different. And as far as his question, do you feel the game has become faster or slower? I think it's become slightly faster than it was because the whole game was a laning phase in the beginning. That's pretty much all it was. Everyone stuck to the lanes and went.
Fat cat.
And then
the cat
stuff happened. You had your two top.
I think the game is slowed. This game is slowed down from season 3. Go ahead.
I mean, this game's kind of actually at a middle point because season 1 and kind of season 2 were pretty slow, but season 3 was like super fast paced. So
we saw mid game at 12 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, what average games
3 to 4
are going
is
like 28 minutes.
Slower.
Yeah, it's slower than season 3, but like compared to season 1 and games going to like 50 minutes every game, I think it's
the average length of the LCS games is like 35 minutes, 32 minutes or something like that right now.
That was the stat I saw was the average length of CLG and also TSM games, and they were like 35 and 38 minutes.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was like 32 and 35, something like that.
But it still was somewhere in the mid 30s.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the average stat for across the LCS, but I'm sure when it's Alliance playing, games take way longer.
When you had asked that question earlier, is LCS a great indicator of how the game is going? I think that's is
that a fair comparison?
Fair comparison. I was trying to yes, thank you, but I think that's the only comparison that we can really talk about because I think out of the 4 of us, 2 of you play a lot more solo queue than the other 2 of us do, and you both play at different skill levels than maybe our listeners play at, or you play different skill levels than what we play at, because Declawd, you're silver 1, right? So
yeah.
You're playing gold 5s, and Sean over here is gold 1 playing plat 5s, and I'm plat 4 playing anywhere from plat 2 to plat 4s, and I know
I've played,
and he doesn't play, and like when I was playing this weekend, towers were down at 5-6 minutes. People were just going ham and getting kills and taking towers. Every game I played was over within like 23, 24 minutes because people were just going nuts. But I think that's like the state of solo queue where kills come more quickly. But
I'm excited to get into solo queue. I've been wanting to. I've just been ridiculously busy with stuff for the last like 2.5 months or something. So it's gonna happen.
Right, but my point is, because we're all at different skill levels and we all see how the game is played at those different skill levels, I think it's hard to judge the game until you see it in a competitive setting where people are able to use or min-max the game. And I'm sure Riot's looking at that as heavily as they're looking at solo queue.
I personally would like mid-game to feel a little bit more impactful because to me that's the stage of the game where just about everybody on the team can really contribute or can contribute. Maybe not necessarily to their max potential, but the flip side is there are champions that really fall off late game. And right now it just sort of like based on our team games and that type of thing, it just sort of feels like mid-game is a low point.
Yeah.
And to me that's the only issue with the pacing of the game right now. Early game, in bot lane is really frantic and hectic. There's a lot going on.
More so now, bot lane feels like a bloodbath way more than it has in the past.
It's always felt like a bloodbath to me, so it's not really a...
That's just the people you play with.
It's just a different kind of bloodbath now. Yeah, maybe that's true.
It's who can get level 2 first or who can get level 6 first.
Yep.
I hate getting to lane and knowing I'm not going to hit level 2 first, and it happens.
Well, a lot of like the LCS guys, they're not even helping at blue or red anymore. Like the bottom lane is hardly helping if at all because they lose level 2 so quickly if they don't.
Well, to be honest, junglers don't really need it for the most part anymore anyway, so it's not that big a deal.
Still want it.
Some people bitch too. It's really funny.
They do bitch.
I know.
It's because they don't understand what
Thanks
happens.
for the help, guys. It's like, cool. You're 10 health lower than you were before. Great.
Nice passive-aggressive jungling style.
Well, the mids do it too, by the way.
I don't even
when
help
they don't
if
get
I'm
their
mid,
blue.
Ever. I'm just like, even if I can throw something over the wall, nope, go in the lane, get to level 2 quicker than this guy because I'm killing him. I mean, that's how I play.
Well, I can always throw one thing and then get there before the first minion dies, so...
Well, that's because we've only ever seen you play Ziggs, where you actually have something to throw.
Yeah, when it's something... Yeah, I don't really play melees mid, other than Pantheon, who can throw a spear, so...
I mean, I could play Jarvan and toss a Q over the wall, but that's 60 mana. That's a lot of mana for Jarvan.
Jarvan.
A fifth of your bar.
I only have 120 mana. I only have like 300 mana to start. I can only do
You
my
got one
twice.
combo and then you're done.
Yeah.
You got
should do
nothing
mid-
else.
You
All
should
that
do
passive
mid-blitz.
damage. That's where it's coming from.
Do mid blitz, Rocket, grab the golem across the wall and run to your lane. Let him deal with it.
Done it so many times. I love it. I'm feeling trolly.
There you go. I helped.
Professional
welcome.
asshole, Adam.
I'm gonna do that to Josh one of these days. He's not gonna know it.
You don't get paid enough to be as big of an asshole as you are.
I'm really a nice guy, Dom.
Uh-huh.
Keep telling yourself that.
Yeah. Yeah, whatever gets you to sleep at night, big guy.
This gets me to sleep. Lemonade.
That was a good face that you made there.
I'm just disappointed with this podcast. Like, I like the discussion, and I think the discussion was great, but like the tone of the podcast got set early, and now it's just killing me at this point.
I haven't had any
Why?
trouble with
Because
it.
you
I don't
rage
know.
quit 3 times?
Because
Yeah.
I've rage quit 3 times.
No,
I'm just like,
he just hit the surrender button and then AFK'd. It wasn't rage
I
quit.
can AFK the rest of the podcast again if you want. I'll do it 4 times. Here we go. We'll just stick these.
He
right
keeps
here.
intermittently saying GG. You know? Oh, GG.
Anyway,
Died.
Anyway.
Oh, they
Jeff
killed my ward.
writes-
GG.
Hey! You're not Hornet. You don't take over my job.
Anyway, Jeff writes, G off.
Geoff.
Go ahead, Dom.
G off.
I was letting one of
Take
you
it,
take
Adam.
it. All right, Jeff writes, I always find myself gravitating towards champs with some method of immediately closing the gap. Do you think that a champ with a gap closer will almost always be stronger than those without? It just seems like a huge advantage to me, but maybe I'm overvaluing gap closers.
That mobility
It's a
creep.
huge- I think it's an advantage for sure. That's one thing that makes it easier when you have some kind of gap closer / escape.
So, support's funny because you don't necessarily have a lot of like conventional gap closers. It's not like you have, the Pantheon jump or like an Ezreal flash or anything like that. Your gap closers are usually getting you into trouble. So I that's how I look at gap closers, and in that regard, it's like I don't really care if I have one or not. I just have to go about things in a different way. To me, it's really easy to get comfortable with champions that have gap closers, and because of that familiarity, you become disinclined to try other ones out, but that doesn't make the other champions bad or unviable or anything like that.
I feel like Sean should talk about gap closers because this is where you want to do something stupid pretty much coming from.
Well, it's funny because Dom was bringing that up. He's like, oh yeah, support, whatever, gap closer, getting you into trouble. And I'm just sitting here like, I play support Maokai and I know exactly those feels
Yeah,
every time.
I mean, that's a gap closer, but that's not getting you out of trouble ever.
No, that's either you're killing somebody or you're dead.
Yeah.
And
So
I don't know.
Alistar is the same way for the most part.
I like, and I mean, many of the champions right now that are seeing a ton of success, all of them have gap closers. I mean, look at last season 2 with Ari, Zed, Gragas.
Fizz.
Fizz. People with escapes that can get over small walls and create distance. I think in those situations, they do have a definite advantage over people that don't have it, like Rise. And if you look too, a lot of the older champions are the ones without those kind of abilities too, except for like Katarina and LeBlanc and a couple others. But I mean, for a while, those champions had fallen out of favor, and now we're kind of seeing a little bit of a rising up by them again. Yeah, but there are definite situations where gap closers have a clear advantage over champions that don't have one.
Yeah, escapability. It's more like a gap widener from a jungle gank. You know, that's where I see having that in your pocket is most useful.
I mean,
Like
I guess
Satchel Charge,
I
rarely
guess I
use it
just
to
don't
close
know.
the gap.
I don't know if I agree with the sentiment that older champions didn't have them, because just looking like from launch, Alistar, Fiddlesticks, Jax, kinda Master Yi, Tristana, and Warwick, they all have some type of gap closer.
Okay.
That's
think 75%
fine.
of the ones you
Early
said
game.
were like
Are
Maokai,
the all
where
in.
they're all in.
They're the
gap
all
That's
in
fine.
gap
They still,
closer.
they still have the gap closer type thing going.
Yeah, but if you look at any of the new champions with them, their gap closers can either, jump them wherever they want, or have them
I'm just
jump
saying
back
it's not
to where they
like
were.
It's a thing that's been around a long time, and I think
Yeah.
that's a misperception that like mobility is much more focused on the new champions. It's like no, it's been around for a long
Well,
time.
no, mobility is there, but the issue is that it's grown in different ways.
Well, yeah.
So, like, the entire...
It'd be boring if every single champion was Alistar's headbutt.
I know, and I feel like Riot's almost grasping at straws for new ideas for that kind of stuff.
The champion release is slowed down.
Yeah.
Well, they're getting there. Like Jinx killing a turret or champion gives her a speed boost. That's her mobility.
Right.
You know, they're getting a little creative with it, which I don't mind. We're finding a good spot for it.
Yeah,
I was hardened by champions without gap closers. I played Ryze. I played Morgana. I don't need a goddamn gap closer to make it start.
Looking at the champs that came out in 2013, only Jinx and I guess Thresh. I don't know. Are we calling Thresh that a gap closer or not?
If you're calling Alistar or Warwick a gap closer,
I was about to say, yeah, if you're calling either of those a gap closer.
Then only like Jinx is the only one to come out without a gap closer.
And that makes sense. I mean, with an AD carry, it's...
Thresh, Quinn, Zac, Lissandra, Aatrox, Lucian, and Yasuo all have one in some capacity.
And then right before that, Kha'Zix and other people.
Everybody had to jump in their kit.
I did. Nami did not. Zed, Elise, Kha'Zix, they all did. Syndra did not.
Nope.
Rengar, Diana, they did. Zyra.
He's going through. No, Zyra doesn't.
She does not. No, she does not.
Nope.
Jace does. Draven and Darius do not. Varus does not. And then,
I don't think it's fair to say definitively gap closer champions are better than non-gap closer champions. You got to look at their kits. You just got to see what you like.
You also have
better.
to count on the person that's playing too, because if somebody sucks and they're playing a person with a gap closer, and they're screwing up.
You just got to change how you play. You can be a little bit more overextended if you have an escape.
Season 3, we saw Ryze in the top lane for how long? When he was more of a power because of the tier and items that played into him, and he didn't have gap closer. The only way he got out was with Flash.
Or by obliterating his
enemy.
enemy.
He was murdering everybody.
Right.
When everybody's dead.
You don't need to escape when you're killing your opponents.
Well, look at Jinx. She's disgustingly... she can be powerful and snowball like mad, and she doesn't have a gap closer.
Again, you don't
Other
need
than
to
when she kills
when
somebody.
you're murdering your opponents.
You don't need to escape when you have a snare and a slow in your kit, and you run faster when you kill somebody.
And they're dead, and your rocket blows them up.
So you got to look at the kit. It's not just about the gap closer.
That's right. All right, Professor Moot, you're the last one. It seems like Riot has been patching champions to fit into the solo jungle duo meta, with kits being obviously made for the specific roles of jungle, marksman, top. It's frustrating seeing the meta enforced when they could release less specific champions, more jacks, etc., that would allow flexible lane comps and build ideas. Am I just imagining this pattern, or does it look like Riot is making champions to fill roles instead of making champions and letting players build roles? I think Professor Moot, you are looking at this correctly yet incorrectly, because the meta is here and the meta is not going to change. This is not Dota, and it's never going to be the point where Dota you have the 3-1-1 lanes because of the way experience is shared, because of the extra gold found in the jungle with jungle items. Riot is going to continue to release champions that can play in the current meta, but can actually work outside of it if you want to do a lane swap, or if you want to run potentially 2 mid, 1-1, whatever it may be.
And you can also bring up they're making champions to fit certain roles and not letting players build roles. But I mean, Annie, who's a mid lane champion for almost the entirety of her being in the game, had that giant jump to being almost support only now and killing it.
She's not a good comparison. She's in fact illustrating his point.
I don't know.
I don't think Riot's developers inherently sit down and say we want to make a marksman or a top laner or something like that. I don't think they sit down and say we want to make a champion that fills this role. I think they sit down with concepts for some type of character archetype that they want to fulfill, and then they start to flesh things out from there. At a certain point, from a gameplay development standpoint, it becomes apparent where the champion is going to best succeed.
Fits a certain spot.
But that doesn't mean that they sat down with the intent for Zac to be a jungler or a top laner or a mid laner. He was getting played in mid lane for a little while.
I guess you have to look at Lulu. They sat down and they released Lulu as a support champion, or like, this is your next support champion. And then she started seeing a lot of play in other lanes, and people started to shift in how they play the champion based on
she's still getting played in mid lane.
You can also look at Yasuo too, because when he came out, nobody really had any idea what lane he should go in. Everybody was playing him jungle, top, wherever, and he kind of fell into mid as well. So
And
My
the
point.
champion spotlight for him highlighted all the roles. It said, okay,
Right.
here's how he's in the jungle, here's how he is mid, blah, blah, blah. So he's very strong here because of this. Watch this. He's very strong here as well because of this, blah, blah. So
Right.
they're
My point
leaving it to
isn't
the
that-
players.
My point isn't that they, are trying to go out and figure out where the champion's going to lane. Like, the reality is, go back to Lulu. Whether you play her top like she was in season 2 on occasion, whether you're playing her support like she's conventionally done, or in mid lane, she's still a heavily utility focused champion, and that's how they define support champions. Annie is like this weird exception to that because of the economics of the game. I would say is probably what benefits Annie most in the bottom lane, but that doesn't that's people really thinking outside the box and how they can, best utilize a champion's kit. I don't think the meta directly. But I don't think the meta directly influences Riot's design at the highest level. Sooner or later it starts to influence things, and they tune numbers around, a champion being in a certain lane and that type of thing. Absolutely, that comes into play. But like when they are really designing the champion and what they envision this champion fulfilling. Like from a character fantasy standpoint, I don't think the meta really comes into play there.
I think they just kind of start falling into a spot.
Maybe we should ask Sotir. Maybe he knows.
Sotir's not champion design. He's balancing and.
I don't know, I have
No,
a
but maybe
feeling-
he knows. Maybe he knows a little bit more about the design process.
I have a feeling once they start fleshing out the kit and they start balancing the abilities, they kind of have somewhat of a role in mind.
You're gonna have an idea as you play the champion. I mean, Zyra, they figured that she was gonna be a mid, but then when you look at her kit with the amount of utility in it, she gravitated toward the support role. And Riot never said, that's not the way we wanted her to play. Riot,
Yeah,
said,
they could.
Okay,
Mind
They
you,
could
for a
nerf her
long
if they
time
wanted
though,
to.
she was really strong in mid too.
sure.
So that.
But Riot,
she
I don't
definitely
think
filled
Riot
a lot
has
of
come out.
spots.
You can look at Annie and Zyra both, and Riot hasn't come out and said, we don't want these champions played here. We're going
Right.
to tweak them to maybe make them a little less desirable to be played there, but they can still be played and fulfill the role that you are putting them in.
If you're
Hell, Ash used
frustrated,
to be a mid.
if
Ash
you're
mid.
frustrated at, well, yeah, that was a different meta at the time.
That
And that's
was
really a
pre-meta,
case
yeah.
where like the meta wasn't established. You used to run into a lot of 2-1-2 lanes. Just because the meta never really got established. And the meta is what it is right now because it's the most efficient way to play the game. That's just the reality. Having a no or low income support champion who's not focusing on CS, and then 3 lanes where people are farming as many minions as possible, and then 1 jungler farming one person farming the jungle. That's just the most economical way to play the game. It is the reality, and they would have to do some major map overhauls in order to change that. As far as hybrid champions and that type of thing goes, I really think hybrid champions are a case of early on Riot not having a cohesive design philosophy. So that's why you get champions like Kayle who scale with AD and ability power, and you can't really tell what she's supposed to do because she's also got a lot of utility. That's why you've got Jax, who's this weird hybrid bruiser if you really want to build him that way. That's why you have Mordekaiser, who looks like he should be some kind of monster tank fighter dude, and then he's
And he's an
this
AP
weird
mage.
bursty mage. Yeah.
No.
And now,
Like,
now
they
you're
just-
bringing up Scion, where he makes no sense at all.
Yeah. So
And it isn't fun to play against when he's shitting on you.
if you're upset about like
True that.
champions not having that same type of versatility, it's because Riot has like better developed and like really understood its own design philosophy, and so they can make much more cohesive and frankly clearer champions. Like, it doesn't matter where you play Yasuo, it's clear how you're supposed to build him
Right.
and how you're going to succeed with him. And the same can't be said for someone like Warwick. Like, what are you supposed to do with Warwick? You can build a mage, you can build him tanky, and like basically you're just supposed to run at people and lifesteal through it all.
Good point, Dom. I think you're right. You were on fire tonight, buddy.
Good rant,
guess.
Dom. It was great.
Well done.
Was that a rant? Did I take Hornets thing?
Yeah.
No, we gave that
you
to, we
did.
gave that
You
to
got it.
Tom last night though.
Oops. Well, sorry for anyone watching live. All right, guys. I think that'll do it. Don't forget to check out TrinityForcePodcast.com. We release every Wednesday and Friday. We go live every Monday and Wednesday. The LCS podcast, lcs.TrinityForcePodcast.com, will be out Tuesdays at MP3, lcs.TrinityForcePodcast.com, live on Sundays. I'll put a big schedule post on the website and have a link to it so you guys can find this. And of course, the Oz LOL podcast goes. I don't even know if they go live. We haven't talked about it, but they're released every Thursday.
I don't think they're equipped to do so yet. That's on us.
Right. We're getting there.
One of these days.
Or they joined up with the wrong crew, huh?
Yeah.
We weren't prepared.
We spent a
They're
lot
looking
of
for
time
organization.
getting the LCS podcast together because they were already equipped to do a podcast. So we had we didn't.
Yeah.
We had to
They
get
can
the
fly
other
on
one
their
going.
own.
Yeah, no, we'll get everybody going here. So everyone's got websites, everyone's happy. So guys, thanks again for watching. And the servers are acting funky, so ranked 5s might not happen. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
See ya.